when I got the phone call, that was pretty, harrowing to go back over it. The first time seeing Sean at the Walton Centre, going to visit him in the ICU with Sean's brother Peter, and just seeing him there so helpless, like just awful. Just, it's your worst nightmare, really.
Hello and welcome to a very special event. The official launch of a very special and excellent book, With Hope in Your Heart, written by Martina Cox with Susan Keogh. How difficult was it for you to relive some of those experiences?
Yeah, I mean, some of them were awful, obviously, there was kind of key ones that were, obviously that, when I got the phone call, that was pretty, harrowing to go back over it. The first time seeing Sean at the Walton Centre, going to visit him in the ICU with Sean's brother Peter, and just seeing him there so helpless, like just awful. Just, it's your worst nightmare, really. Something that really comes across in the book as well, Martina, is how yourself and Sean used to take all these decisions together, and you sort of spoke for each other and you did things together. And yet then you were left in a position where you had to be Sean's voice, that you actually had to speak up for him, which was a very, very big responsibility. Again, how difficult was it to do that, given that all of your adult life you had done that together? Yeah, that was hard. I was, some parts of that are still difficult for me, just making, I suppose, life decisions and different things that goes on with the family. That is really difficult. But it wasn't difficult for me to be Sean's voice when I knew he couldn't, he couldn't fend for himself. That just kind of instinct just kicked in, like, he was helpless. So I was going to make sure I was going to fight tooth and nail for absolutely everything, that he got the best and that he was looked after properly. There were times when you actually did have to fight for him, and there are quite some shocking parts in the book, particularly in relation to what happened in Beaumont Hospital when he was moved back to Dublin from Liverpool. And you felt at times that the ICU care, without getting any criticism of individual doctors or nurses, but it wasn't always all that it could have been, was it? No, I mean, I think it really hit home to me how stretched the Irish healthcare system was. And obviously, because Sean was vulnerable, that I was afraid that was going to impact on Sean. So that's when I kind of said, I'm going to have to make sure that every aspect of Sean's care is kind of in my hands, and I needed to be in control of it. I don't want to be just focusing on negative things, because there's so much positivity in the book. And what I particularly loved as well was that when you were worried about, what Sean would manage to regain after the severe injury he had received, that one thing that he hadn't lost was his gift for making friends. And it comes across that both in Dún Laoghaire and again in Sheffield, it was quite extraordinary how he managed to forge new friendships. Yeah. I mean, it was great, really, and they all, he met Paul in the NRH, who really looked out for him. Like, he obviously knew Sean couldn't speak, but they had a really nice bond. We're still in contact with that family. And then when he was in Sheffield, his next door neighbour was Amy, who was a young girl who just kind of brought out the best in Sean. It was just lovely how, even if you don't have a voice, you can still kind of bond and, make friendships. They all, by the end of Sean's time in Sheffield, they all knew the Aslan songs, because Sean loved Aslan, so they were all songs. The outpouring was just unbelievable. Like, it came from near and afar. I think, the whole story just kind of resonated with everybody. Sean was just a very ordinary person going to a match. This could have happened to anybody, but unfortunately it was Sean. And everybody it was just their instinct to want to do something. The amount of people, offering to do, fundraisers, whether they were big fundraisers or small fundraisers, was just like unbelievable. How much benefit did you get out of doing it? Talking with Susan about your experiences and then seeing them down in print? Yeah, I think it helped immensely, to be honest, Matt. Just kind of talking through all the different events, the timelines with Susan. She was great, because she kind of she would tell me, we're going to talk on this subject today or whatever, so I could kind of build myself up for that and then, get through it. There was certain days were more difficult than others because of the sensitivity of some of the timelines that happened. But overall, I think it was, I felt good doing it. Susan, tell us a little bit about
getting Martina, who I think is a private and reserved person, as she expressed in the book before she was forced by circumstances to become a public person. How did you get her to open up so frankly and so honestly?
Well, I suppose it was all about trust, really, and I think that kind of, relationship will only work if both of us trusted one another. And I knew Martina wouldn't trust me, straight away. So I guess just the way the book came about, the fact that I kind of went to Sheffield to have a chat with Martina when Sean was having rehab in the Steps Rehabilitation Centre. And I guess on that very first day, I said to her, here are the reasons why I think this book would be really valuable to people, and this is what the story means to me. And I guess Martina, in theory, she was interested in doing the book, but she made it very clear to me that day that she wanted it to be a very sort of true and honest account of what had happened. She didn't want any elements of it to be sensationalised. She wanted it to be a real reflection of exactly the journey that they'd been on. And I was very much, I guess, in agreement with her on that. So quite quickly, I think Martina learned to trust me. And if she didn't trust me with the story, I guess it would have been hard for her to talk to me about some of the things that we had to talk about and to divulge some of, the feelings that she had at different parts. So I guess just because we spent so much time together getting to know one another, that became second nature then. And it was a curve. Like at the beginning, I was very careful not to, maybe get too deep with Martina, because I felt the answer she might give me now will be different to what she might say to me in 3 or 4 weeks' time. So it was all about making a connection. But for some reason, we made that connection very, very quickly. And I think, Martina just got me and I got her, and we very much liked one another from the get-go. So that really, really helped.
It must have been quite emotional at times, though. Things like, for example, dealing with the outcome of the court cases, because clearly it comes across in the book that there was considerable upset at the leniency of the sentences for the men who were responsible for this dreadful crime.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a tough day because it happened when we were writing the book, and just when people read it, they'll realise the circumstances. Martina learnt that news after receiving a letter from a journalist. So it wasn't like somebody from the ministry in the UK, or anybody from the Met Police told Martina. So it very much was a case of opening an envelope in your postbox to learn that the 3 people who had been given a sentence had been released. And Martina rang me straight after that and said to me, she was very upset, and she said to me, they have spent less time in prison than Sean has spent in hospital. And that was the truth of it. There were other stories that were nearly harder, because in a way Martina had spoken about those things before and had been over those parts of the story before. Whereas I remember probably, and Martina probably won't mind me saying this, and she'll agree, that one of the first nights that probably both of us felt very upset on Zoom was a night where I asked Martina to relay what Portugal meant to Sean and herself, because Portugal was a place that they had holidayed, like so many Irish families, fall in love with a holiday destination and go there every year again and again and again until suddenly it's your 15th year going, to the same place. And they really had kind of their own community and home away from home in Portugal. And they had actually, just decided to buy an apartment and invest in this place in Portugal where they had gone all of the time. So to speak about that, really upset Martina and really upset me. And it was something that kind of blindsided both of us, I guess, because you imagine that talking maybe about the attack or Sean being in a coma would be the really harrowing stuff. But it was sometimes the smallest thing. It might be Martina telling me that, during COVID, looking out the window, seeing a couple go for a run, really gave her a lump in her throat because herself and Sean used to run together. And sometimes it was those really small stories that really packed a punch. And I guess it's in those stories that I really feel the true value of the book is, because, like Martina said, we've no control over what happens in life, and I think 2020 has taught all of us that. So there's such a story in learning to live in the moment and remembering that while you might not have control over what happens, you've control over your reaction to it. And that's why Martina impresses me so much, and that is why I feel, she is such an inspiration.
And there are times when clearly she would be angry about things, particularly if she felt Sean wasn't getting treated correctly. But the sense that comes across from the book is that this is not a woman who has been consumed by anger or by bitterness. How remarkable did you find that?
Hugely. And that's why when I say, I've said to so many people that I feel I am a better person now for having worked with Martina on this book. And it's in, some of those learnings that I took from her approach to what happened. So very early on, she said to me that she decided, even back in the Walton Centre, even before Sean had ever opened his eyes yet, that, this had happened and they couldn't change it, but she wasn't going to allow that to define the rest of their lives. So once Sean opened his eyes, that was winning the lotto for Martina, and she decided then that she had gotten what she wanted, so therefore she was going to make the best out of this situation. And that's a lesson for all of us. So hearing her have that perspective, hearing her say that the day in Preston Crown Court, that, you know, she knew in her heart that if she let this anger get in on her, she would go down a road that would not serve her, and it would not serve Sean, and it would not serve Jack, Shauna and Emma. And she made that decision. And for a woman to be able to say, you know, I'm going to park my anger, my bitterness or my resentment at the door because I want the best for my husband and my children, I just think it is such an incredible, like, hugely inspiring thing for her to do.
Martina, you're at home now. Unfortunately, we couldn't do a live event for the launch of With Hope in Your Heart. And at home with you, and we'll see him a little bit later when we have Jürgen Klopp with us as well. You have Sean at home with you and your 3 children. Just how important has that been to you that you have been able to get the family reunited under the one roof?
Well, that was always the end goal, really, you know, right from the get-go, really, for me, even though, you know, I think lots of people thought, you know, this is not going to happen. Sean has a profound brain injury, therefore, you know, some people thought he should be in a nursing home. That was just never on the agenda, you know, for me, for the kids, for Sean's family. The plan was get Sean home and we'll look after him, and, you know, we'll get the care. But he needed to have his family by his side, and it's been the best tonic ever for Sean, for sure.